The Nigerian livestock space, looking at the various species, we have our highs and our lows. Our highs, particularly in the areas of poultry, where the production level and the specialization has reached a level of almost saturation, but being bedeviled with inputs. But the core livestock area, which is cattle, sheep, and goats, a huge population, but let me mention, in terms of productivity per unit, low. Huge population, 20 million, 30 million, in terms of figures. But by the time you look at milk production per animal, 1.3, 1.5, 3 liters maximum based on our local cattle. And the commercial component of that is only 2%, So it means a lot of imports for milk and milk products. It also means, our in terms of weight gain for our cattle that is mainly for beef, has not been very comparable with what is obtainable in other spaces, but there are room for improvement. So largely our livestock subsector is pastoral in nature and with little or no improvement in terms of new technologies to drive the process. The first is to create an enabling environment for the livestock in itself to give us their maximum inputs. Technologies in areas of feed and feed resources, health and health resources, but better than anything else, we need, an identification system for the animals and a traceability system so that the animal products that we have from our operations would have a global acceptance so that we would be able to trace, based on the production system, what form of things have gone in as inputs or outputs that we are anticipating. So these are key, fundamental things that we must have it right. And in having it right, it just goes without saying that the national animal identification and traceability system should be key, because that would form, a basis for us, to leverage, every other thing that we can be able to account for. I would want to give you an instance. In recent years, we've had huge issues with cattle rustling. We've had issues with people raising their livestock and then overnight, are stolen. And that is incentivizing people who are in that sector to go into investment into that area. Now with National Animal Identification and Traceability System, where we have the livestock passports, it means that unless there is a syndicate market, if your animal comes into the market space, can be identified, by its owner, can be identified by its region where it is being produced. So all the criminal tendencies that might have been related with either rustling or other forms of vices that might have come as a result of that would have been largely reduced. I would like to see, the herders gaining, better security for their livestock, the herders getting, better access to markets in terms of their livestock, the people involved in the markets, having some form of assurances, of the sources of their livestock based on the inputs that have gone in, that they are not buying animals that have not been taken care of in a sustainable manner, or in animals that have been reduction in pesticide residue. I would like to see a lot of investments in abattoir, that's in processing and processing related things. And what that means is that also when an animal is fully identified, it means that, the end user who buys at the shelf can trace back, this livestock products. In other systems, self-regulation, you don't need NAFDAC, to push you into this. Self-regulations are what is required. The producers form themselves into organized systems where, they regulate, their production system. So much so that now, if you are producing milk, you now know that this milk comes in without tainted, substances, without microbial antibiotic residues, and it means a double win: a win for the producer, a win for the marketer, and a win for the consumer, because it means that everything is done in a manner to which we can actually trace the hazard and critical points areas across our production cycles. So I see a lot of wins for the economy in itself, because it means that if we are going to have some form of taxations or some form of minor stipends that will be given, it means that also government can accurately monitor who is operating what and who is doing what. And it also means better service production provision, because if I know, based on the animal's identity, I can be able to advise the farmers. It means even extension services that would become more readily available to the herders, in this case largely rural populations, largely the pastoralist, you know uh, if it is cattle, but the other persons that are also involved, a lot of gains